What is going on, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Matter Mentality podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. In case you haven't noticed, we're giving a bit of diversity in content. We're trying to mix things up for you guys, keep it interesting, keep it exciting, get you not just sick of seeing my face and the same thing going on every single episode, but hopefully you're enjoying what is coming out so far. We are into our second week, and it is time to get us all caught up. So this week, I thought that a nice easy but interesting topic to kind of explore would be a bit more about who I am, who we are, what we do, and kind of why. So maybe even where it started. So we've built a bit of a foundation in our first few episodes there. We've kind of dove into where Matter Athletica came from, a bit more about me as the head coach, head educator, I guess personal client, a bit more about myself so that you kind of get a feel for what we do and who I am. So where to start with all this? Well, myself personally, Ben Mayfield-Smith, I am the head coach of Matter Athletica. I'm the head educator for the Matter Institute, and that will continue to progress as the courses and the educational content comes out. I'm also certified as an ISSN sports nutrition specialist. I am certified in acceptance and commitment therapies. I have studied and worked amongst behavior change and motivational conversation or interviewing. And I am currently in my third year of my behavioral science undergrad, majoring in clinical psychology. I am studied in strength and conditioning. I am studied my Cert 3s and 4 in personal training and physical fitness. Have done all of these things, have applied them, have spent many years in the trade, in the skill set, in the area. And that's kind of where the foundation is, I guess, the kind of building of who I am as the head coach or the head shit talker and the head guy talking crap on the episodes and in the institute, the content, the educational stuff as well. So where did it come from? Where did I start? I guess, where did this whole idea really originate? Well, in essence, if we take it right back and get a bit of a basis built here, I've been competitively training or competitively playing sport or competitive areas since I was about probably 4 or 5 years old, as far as I can remember and what I can go back to. My brothers played Milo cricket at a very young age, and me being the youngest boy of the family, often took part in or was around the teams playing, the things that were going on. Dad was a very, very competitive bloke. He was a very well-respected, well-represented, and well-accomplished AFL player. I believe there was a Sydney Swans allocation in there somewhere in something that he did, and that passed on to us in terms of his competitive drive. Now, we as a family were all heavily involved in sports for a long time. We all played rugby league, we all played touch, we all played cricket, we all played AFL, we all played rugby at times, we played lunch sports, we played school sports, we played club sports. So there was never not a time of competitiveness between all three of us, between us as a family, and between what we did at club levels and at the schoolboy level. And that kind of built a heavily competitive foundation for myself to really explore and want to improve, get better, stop sucking, find something I was bad at and improve upon it. All of which kind of originated from that family environment of everyone else being better than me, especially being the youngest, that I wanted to outdo them. I want to outshine them. I want to, impress the old man. I wanted to get the attention. I wanted to get myself better. I wanted to know why I sucked and why I couldn't progress past them. Obviously, there was years of age between us, but at the same time, for me, that was kind of like a barrier that I wanted to overcome rather than look at it as a problem to stop. So, every afternoon we'd be out there training or playing against each other. We'd be doing things, kicking the ball, playing footy, and that would all lead us to continually trying to get better and kind of create a pretty intense rivalry between me and my brothers. And that's where it probably originated, especially as we heavily focused on rugby league. All three of us played it when we moved to Queensland, and all three of us got pretty heavily involved at a decent representative level. And that is where we all really started to get, I guess, really competitive and high strung with each other about who was the best and what positions we played and who could do what and what our skill set was versus the other. So that was probably our first exposure to highly competitive environments and highly competitive self-criticism and self-progression. Well, that's where it was for me, I feel, is where that sort of originated and started. It was always the one-upmanship or the I could do this better than you, I could do this better than you, you're the youngest, shut up, you don't know what you're doing. And that for me led to a lot of, I hate this, I want to be better. I hate sucking, I hate not making the team, I hate not being a part of the team, I hate not getting the position I want, I hate not winning. And that kind of exploded into my obsessive desire to understand people better than me and great people at what I'm trying to do. And in many episodes to come, we'll explore through role models and people that I've looked up to and kind of why I've chosen them or why I looked at them in the way that I did. But the first one that comes to mind, the first one that really shined to me was when I was obsessively interested in Andrew Johns. Now, Andrew Johns was the Newcastle Knights run on halfback and captain. He was the captain and halfback for them for the majority of my playing career until he retired due to injury, but was the greatest player of all time. And I was obsessed with Newcastle, I was obsessed with him. I wanted to know everything he could do. I wanted to know how he could do it. I wanted to know where he passed the ball to make it do a certain thing, how he kicked the ball to make it do a certain thing, how he held the ball at the line, how he showed a dummy, how he passed a face ball, how he did these skills and these maneuvers that if I could only get close to them, I could then pass them on to my team, or I could then use them in the game somewhere. And it was a lot of physical development, a lot of mental development, a lot of skill development, but it was also a lot of pressure. It was a lot of something that I had to put on myself to get better because I sucked. I hated seeing something that could be done and knowing that I couldn't do it. And that for me led to a desire to consistently improve. Seeing how hard I would be able to work on something and try and make something happen. I knew I was right side to left side passing dominant. So I would take away my right side and simply try and force myself to pass my left. I fractured my foot one time when in under 10s or 11s. And to make up for this, because I was left foot kick, I would remove my left leg and I would only try and focus on kicking my right. I would try to develop an ambidextrous skill set because a two-footed kicker was very rare. So I would try and work on these things to simply see how I could be better. Now, it didn't always pan out, but at the same time for me, it was like trying to identify, trying to understand where I sucked and what these guys that were great could do and how I could replicate it or improve it, how I could try and implement it myself. And that's kind of, I guess, the first real exposure that I had to the degree of intensity of pressure that I had on myself and the desire to get better. Now, that doesn't mean I went on to play some elite level rugby league. It didn't happen. And that's totally okay. It's the point that I identified my identity was to improve and get better. I realized that I was not going to be the greatest. I realized that I wasn't the best, but I also recognized that if I could implement and I could train and I could work and I could grind out these skills, then I could get better and I could do things differently. I could improve myself out of sheer force of no choice. I was not going to give my body the option to suck at something as much as it could. If I could only be 70% up to a certain player comparatively, then I would make sure that my body didn't have a choice and my skill set didn't have a choice but to be at that 70%. There was times where I would make certain grades above my own. There was certain times I'd play age groups above my own, and I would pick out players. I would pick out people to go simply be. I would just go be them. I would go follow them. I would go to these training sessions and see what they're doing, take on that pressure and just have fun with it. To me, it was one of the most exciting things to feel that pressure of I've been brought up to do something, or these guys don't want me here, or I don't want to not be here. I don't want to suck. And therefore I need to work hard. I need to show up. I need to train the hardest. I need to do all the work. That mentality to me is kind of what's got me through university, my bodybuilding career, my current careers, building a business. That degree of self-criticism, self-reflection, self-analysis, and ownership has kind of allowed me to build the I want to say association, the affiliation that I have with that degree of that type of person, with that type of person that I not only worship, but now people might start to see me that way because I have heavily ingrained it into everything I do. And that isn't, again, to say that I am the best at something or it's made me the best at something. It's simply I've identified, and I spent a lot of time identifying the way a growth mindset works and the way that I can simply implement this into my life to make sure that I'm leaving no stone unturned in everything that I do, so that if I do suck at it, it's sheerly out of the fact that I'm meant to suck at it. And there's nothing else I can do about it. I'm not genetically gifted to be a 7-foot tall African-American basketballer. That's okay. That's totally fine. But if I were to take up basketball, I would want to know every move and maneuver and step that I could take to make sure the only limiting factor that I have is my genetics. Something outside of my control that I have no control over. And that's something that I employ a lot with my clients, and I try to employ a lot with people around me, is that there are certain things out of our control, and that's completely okay. But if we are grinding and ticking over every single box to make sure that we are doing the things we need to do, then the only thing stopping us is going to be the genetic predispositions, the uncontrollable things that are outside of our handle that we can't change. And that's going to stop us from doing certain things, and that's fine. But if we're leaving a lot of things unturned, if we're not ticking off every box, that's going to leave the potential for it to be something else other than genetics, something outside of our control that's stopping us from achieving that degree of success. And I guess that's something I've always tried to have. Now, that's also got me through my study. It's got me through playing careers. It's got me through injuries. It's got me through a whole list of things. But I guess to progress on from that, as that was my kind of that first exposure I had to competitive, intense environments and to self-development, to physical pressure, to physical development. I then took that into high school, into schoolboys. I took that into different age groups, different sports. Again, I was never the best at a sport. I couldn't tell you a sport that I was the best at, but I could tell you sports that I was rarely outworked at. I would rarely show up and not give 100% of everything that I could do to get better, to be fitter, to be faster, to be stronger. If I knew I sucked at something, the only times I could ever picture or think of the time where I stopped doing that was when I had relationships or partners, especially as a young man, where those things came up and kind of got in the way. And that, for me, was a big identifier, because I realized that I lost my own self and I lost my own identity in these relationships and things that were just in the way. They were hindrances and I didn't want them. So for me, there was rarely a time where if I did suck at something or I did identify something, I wasn't giving absolutely everything I could to get better at it or make sure I was doing my best at it. So that was kind of where or how my nature, I guess, was fostered, or whether it was grown, it was picked apart by my old man, it was supported by mum. There was a whole list of things, but that was kind of my first real exposure to, or consistent exposure to, that high performance, high pressure, high degree of self-expectation that I don't know if a lot of people have. I know a lot of people will go through life or go through childhood or go through high school, and it's just having fun every weekend, or it's going out with mates and it's doing these things. I worked 20 to 30 hours at a part-time job. I was at school full-time. I was still trying to play 2 different club sports at the same time. I was still trying to play schoolboy rugby league at the same time. There was rarely a time where I wasn't doing something, trying to get better or improve, or try and enhance my reach or get better at something, because I knew that I wasn't going to be the best at it. And so for me, if I couldn't identify that I wasn't the best at it, if I couldn't pick up that, if I couldn't analyze that myself and to internally reflect, then that was a problem for me, because it meant I wasn't going to get better. It meant I wasn't going to improve or get a better mark or get a better skill or be better at something. There was one season, and it sticks with me more than most seasons in my rugby league career, for the simple fact that we didn't win a whole game. And that haunted me for a very long time. There was an entire season where no matter who I spoke to, what I did, who I brought in, who I asked to help, who I approached, who I tried to get advice from, every single thing that I could do, I was asking myself, what could I do better to make this team win, and try and motivate them or drag them along or get them to go to a place that we hadn't been in order to get a win. Because I knew the team was okay. We were outside our depths, and there was only so much that I could do as a single player. And that assessment, when I would reach out to other coaches, and I was only 14 or 15, I think at the time, maybe 14. And I would reach out to these teams, and I would reach out to these coaches, and I would reach out to these players and ask them. And these are guys older than me. I would find people older than me. I would find coaches much older than me. I would find the presidents of the club. I would find people say, this team needs to get better. What do I do? And I don't know if any of the players did that. I don't know if the coaches did that, but I knew that we were sucking, and I knew that this was something that I was never going to feel again. And I set that for myself from that day onwards, from that season onwards, that I was never going to feel this way. I was never going to feel this level of embarrassment again in my playing career, my personal career, in my training career. It would just never happen. And I would like to say that it hasn't. But again, being able to identify that weakness, that setback, that problem, I was able to look at this and say, this is not good enough. I'm not good enough. This is not how it's supposed to be. This is not what we're supposed to do. I need to be better. I need to take ownership that I suck at this, and I'm sucking and the team is sucking, and we need to improve. And I think that, again, is just a degree of self-expectation, of self-criticism, of self-analysis that I had that I don't think a lot of other people do. And that was even at a young age of, say, 14. And that was not something that slowed down or died off as I got older either. That was just a taste of my playing career that I went through highs and lows, and there was good seasons, there was great seasons, there was terrible seasons. But the terrible seasons like that one really allowed me to reflect and see how bad I was, or what I sucked at, or what skills I could learn to make this better. So if we did lose, it was something far beyond the team or my own control that I just simply couldn't handle. And that was kind of a real wake-up call for me about seeing players like my idol, like Andrew Johns, who could take a bad team and turn the game around and still win. And I need to know how I could do that and how I could make this happen and how I could improve to that regard, so that if there was a team that we were in that was not doing well or was suffering or sucking, I could do something that could turn a game around. I could push them. I could drive them. I could throw a pass. I could put a kick in. I could do something that would make the game switch or change up. And I think that was a really defining part of my playing career and high school life was having that losing season, because it allowed me to reflect so heavily on not wanting to suck ever again, on wanting to be better, on wanting to improve, wanting to grow, to set goals, to achieve bigger things than simply losing at this grade and never winning the game again. It was a feeling that I probably still to this day can remember and was disgusted with. And I'll still not ever think that it wasn't disgusting, even whether it was 14, 25 or 35, I wouldn't care. And I guess that kind of like that mentality led even through high school and into older life, into adulthood, into my playing careers in out of cities. When I changed towns and I moved, I took on a challenge that after winning our under 18 A grade grand final, after winning that and contracts weren't had and things like that, I was looking for something new. And I moved out of town about 2 hours away from where we lived. I moved a whole entire different town that no one knows me here. This is the perfect time to set a name for myself, establish something, and start to get a bit of a chance here to build something new that no one knows me out here. So I could build a new reputation. I could build a new name. I could build a new skill set. I could build in a new team. And that took me out to Ipswich, where I started playing with probably the most dominant team in the area, which I didn't know at the time. But that allowed me to, again, push myself to new places, find out who was good, find out who was bad. What's the expectation? What's the quality of the competition like? What do I have to do to get better? And I found work out there so that I could do this. I found work out there so I could take on this opportunity. I could afford to live out there and take on these chances with this club. And it was really one of the best things I ever did, because I realized I could handle older clubs. I could handle senior teams. I could handle men's grade football that I hadn't played before and still be competitive at 19, 20, playing against 30-year-olds, former NRL players, A-grade rugby league players, things like this that they really humble you and put you in a spot and put you in your place. But I still realized that I could be competitive with them, especially in years to come. I could build a career out here and get better and potentially take on contracts and a strive for those if I got to that position. And that was something that I really enjoyed the focus of, and being able to find where I sucked again, find my weaknesses, get better at them, see if I can improve. I had to get bigger, I had to get stronger, I had to get faster, I get heavier. I went from 80 kilos at 20 to 95 kilos at 21, just by forcing food into my gob, just forcing down as much food as I could. I was natural at the time. I was just simply training hard, doing a lot of footy, playing a lot of league, a lot of gym work and a lot of food, and was just trying to force myself to grow, to get stronger, so that I wasn't going to be caught out by these bigger dudes again. I knew that was something that I sucked at, and especially against these larger western suburbs, larger country blokes that hit hard and ran hard, that I need to be stronger than them. Again, that was just something that I managed to find out and figure out with myself, that I sucked at this and I was weak and I was small and it was embarrassing. And it was that goal that I set that I would never do that again. And every time I did that, I found myself getting better and better and improving, because I recognize that feeling of sucking, and I recognize that feeling of being weak at something and not good at something. And I want to improve that. And then, unfortunately, and this is probably another episode that we'll go into another day, which will be the kind of pinnacle changing point in my life, in my playing career, in my sporting career, my business career, my work career. I was in a car accident at 20. I was in a car accident at 2021. I think it was 21. And it was 2000. It was 2012. In 2012, I was hit by a car on the way to work as a third-year apprentice. And on that day, I changed everything and lost everything and gained a new perspective on a lot of things. But it was something that happened to me that I think it takes a lot of people a long time to experience in order to really change their perspective in life. But at 21, I had a car accident that damaged a lot of my spine, caused a lot of nerve damage, caused a lot of back damage, caused a lot of weakness, and caused a lot of stability issues. that I could never work again. I was probably never going to play career football again to the degree I was going to or trying to. I was told I would never train aesthetically again. I would never train heavy again. I developed a lot of physical reactive depression. I was diagnosed with a 7 to 10% permanent spinal disability. And at the same time as that, my father was diagnosed with his first bout of terminal cancer. And fortunately for that, he kind of got through it. But to a degree, all of these things happened at once and forced me to reassess my entire life. I had to go through 4 years of court. I had to go through 4 years of 21 doctors, specialists, physicians, psychologists, psychiatrists, assessors, court cases, lawyers, doctors. I had to go through everything for 4 years to get some sort of compensation for the fact that this dick didn't want to wait and sit at a red light for an extra 5 minutes. And so he sped and ran through it. Now, I'm not as bad as a lot of other people who've had accidents like that. It's not about that. And that was one of the big perspective shifts that I managed to achieve, was that using my competitive edge and my competitive nature, this wasn't going to be something that set me back forever. And I set that goal for myself when I was going through my rehab and going through my spinal rehabilitation, my core rehabilitation, my strengthening, that I could win this. And I set that goal that I would win my rehab, and I would not let that bloke, who, mind you, probably has no idea even exists. He's completely forgot about me. Yet I can tell you everything about the moments during and after him hitting me, like it happened yesterday. But I said to myself that I would not let that incident, I would not let him beat me, because it already beat, in my mind, that was already a loss. That was a loss. I took an L on that day that completely set me back. And I would not take another L from that bloke, and I would not throw in the towel, I would not quit. I would not let this injury define the rest of my life, because that would be another W for him. That would be something else that he would win, and something that he could take from me without even knowing or caring about it. He couldn't recognize it, but he could do it. So I set every possible thing in place that I could to maximize my rehab. I was stung with a very hefty bill by work cover. I was charged pretty heavily by lawyers. I was charged by doctors. I was charged by a lot of things. Luckily, I got a fair bit of it back in my compensation claim. But the fact is, up front, I was stung a few heavy bills to make these things happen. But I was at physio 2 to 3 times a week. I was getting massage every week. I was doing core. I was doing yoga. I was doing Pilates. I was doing hot yoga. I was doing weight training. I had to suffer through acute electrical stimulus from my spinal cord, from my nerves. This kind of pain that I could barely explain to people, just to simply see what exercises did or didn't aggravate or hurt my back. What ones could I do that didn't make me lock up and freeze and lose my breath and shudder like I couldn't simply move. There was a lot in there that it took a lot of time to figure out what didn't work, what was going to aggravate, what was going to cause fatigue, what was going to stimulate and overwhelm. And I spent 4 or 5 years going through that. So while people are playing their careers, while people are starting their bodybuilding career, while people are studying and going to uni, while people are doing all these things, I was going through an entire life rehabilitation process at no fault of my own, other than the fact that I said to myself, I was not going to let this end, and I was not going to win. And I twice remember driving over a bridge, which ironically I worked near at one point. And I drove past it once, and I sat at it once, and I contemplated driving off it. I just thought it'd be a super easy way that I could just take all these drugs, I could drive as fast as I want, and I could just drive off this bridge, and that would be it. And I said again, that would be an L for me and a W for this guy who has no reason to even know I exist. He doesn't care. His life has moved on past it. But for this single moment, I had said to myself that if I do this, he wins. And this guy's off in La La Land, not even caring that I exist. It's not a thing to him. He has no problems. My entire life changed. And in that perspective, I was able to look at what I could do, able to look at what was happening, able to look at what was coming, and realize that things were only going to get better. This was literally the bottom it could get for me. I had zeros in my bank account. My father was dying. My spine was ruined. My career was over. My playing career was over. Especially as a kid who played rugby league since he was 5 years old, to have that sort of flash before you that, well, that's it now. Like, that's probably not going to happen. That dream's done. That entire identity you've built around this sport, this concept, this community is over. And that was a pretty humbling and awakening moment. And up until that point, I was ready to throw in the towel. And I just said to myself that he doesn't get another W. He doesn't get, there is something I can do. There is a competitive edge I can have to this, that I can beat him without him even knowing or caring. And that was a massive shift for me, because that got me out, not out of the car, got me out of that situation, that scenario, and it never came again. It was something that I was never going to, if I could handle that. And it's a perspective that I've kept for a very long time, is that if I could handle that, if I could handle all of that at that age, to me, I could literally start again, have zeros in my bank account and still come out. I would still come out on top in some way, and I would still win. I would still find a way to get better. I would still find a way to improve, get a skill set, develop something that would let me win if I can handle and get through this situation. And that was kind of again, that sense of self-pressure and self-analysis, self-reflection that I developed at a young age that got me through this. And it's when people always say that sports or competitive sports or physical sports are dangerous, or they're egotistical or they're masculine and all this sort of jazz, just irritated me, because it helped me get through so much. And because of this, I was able to do so much and continue to do so. Even now, after all of these years, I was told I'd never deadlift, I'd squat again, I would never do XYZ. I've now built exercises into my programming that absolutely blow those statements out of the water. I have a physique that, though is nowhere near where I want it to be, is tenfold what a lot of people have. And it's taken a lot of work to get there. It's taken a lot of setbacks and obstacles, injuries, rehabs, problems, programming, phases. But that's the degree of mental intensity that I applied to it from that sort of mental skill set I developed at such a young age. And I think that's played a large part in becoming who I am, and going through that has set me up for what's to come. And I guess luckily, but I don't envy them, but there are a lot of people who don't go through those things at early stages in life and kind of get to go through scot-free. And though they have a good and easy life, it doesn't allow them to foster or build those mental skills that I now get to possess from going through all this shit. And it's not as bad as a lot of people. It's not about who's the most victimized. It's not who's the biggest victim, because I hate that word and I hate that term. I don't look at myself as a victim. I look at myself as someone who was exposed to opportunities to get better, to get bigger, to get stronger, to get mentally more flexible, to get mentally resilient, and to develop a sense of mental toughness that without those things I probably wouldn't have had. And they were like kind of, you could say, fork in the road moments or deciding factors in life that it let me make these choices, that if I was any weaker mentally, if I was any harder on myself, if I was any worse on myself, if I was more leaning to myself, I probably would have had that sense of compassion and just said, you know what, just go, just end it. I may have said, that's it, that's enough. Like there's not much else you can do, throw in the towel. But that wasn't me. It wasn't something that I was allowed to, it wasn't something I was allowed to have. As much as people hate fathers that are critical or harsh on their kids and push them to be better, that's that sense of physical, mental, and skill development that Dad put into us, that he drilled into us at every game. Anytime he came to watch, it developed in me to not be a pushover, not let those things happen. So that was kind of a thing that I guess I carried through that helped me get through it, and it helped me get past that scenario and that situation. Even when Dad passed, which yes, unfortunately he did pass away when I was 25, so 26, 4 years ago now. His 4-year anniversary not long ago. So 4 years ago, he passed away. And even still to that moment, the way he fought and the way he pushed through his chemo and his problems, and against another episode which we'll go into later, and when we start looking at role models and people that have helped me achieve these things, watching him fight through that, even the last 2 years when it was the most terminal, the most dangerous, most deadly, the most toxic in his chemotherapy and things like that, his radiation treatments, that showed me that if he can do that, and it's something that you'll see me probably talk about on Instagram a lot, my posts, my content, when I think that I'm tired, when I think I'm sore, when I think I'm struggling, I look at the work he did for 10 years to get to where he was and still be able to be alive, to see things and reflect on that I'm not that bad. And there are people far worse than me. And if I can handle that, I can do a lot of things. I can take a lot of things. But there are people who can handle even more. People have gone through far worse. And therefore that changed your perspective on how you view what you get to do, what you have to do, what life is. I think for me, that was a massive thing, to be able to go through that stuff at such a young age, where most people might wait till they're 40, 50, 60 before they start to experience these things and really flick that switch of, oh, what could I have done? Luckily for me, and I say luckily, as it was a fortunate event. I got to go through those things and now change my perspective on life. I now get to carry this with me the rest of the time that I'm here and the rest of the things that I do. And I will not take a small, weak mindset or mentality to anything that I do from now on, because I know that at any moment, at any instance, or at any point of life, there's going to be a diagnosis, a terminal call. There'll be a terminal incident. There'll be something of a death event that can take you away without any second thought. And if that's going to be the case, then I'm not going down without swinging. I'm not going down without doing everything I possibly can to get what I want and do what I want and achieve what I want, because we're all going out regardless. So why not go out doing the things that we want? So that's this episode. I think that kind of just touched a little bit more about who I am, what I've been through, where my education's come from, what I've been doing, what I'm trying to do, kind of what I've been through, I guess. So, it's not always going to be about me. It's not always going to be about those things. So just a bit of a broader statement on how things are and sort of like where I guess the background a little bit. So hopefully you enjoyed that episode. Again, guys, if you have any questions, any issues, any thoughts, anything you want me to talk about, please DM me directly. Please send an email, send a message on Instagram, whatever it is you need to do. And we'll get some episodes or answer your questions, hopefully. Just remember also that coaching spots are still available. And if you have any questions, please find a link in our on the website, in my bio on Instagram, or just message me directly. Have a great week, guys, and we'll chat to you soon.